This is the view from my rooms at University College, some of the dreamy spires of Oxford. This is the part of college known as 90 High. It's the oldest part of college. Dates back to the 16th century. Well, you can tell that from the 3-in-1 slope of the floor going down to what used to be the wash basin over here. Because they got plumbing laid on now in there. We never had any of that. We had a scout brought in a jug of water every morning, took the chamber pot out with him when he came. Because this was incredible for me, having a manservant coming from my background. I could never get used to the idea. I was terrified of him. I knew he disapproved of me. I knew he knew I wasn't a gentleman. Didn't matter what clothes I wore. And Fred didn't approve. I mean, he certainly wouldn't have approved of all this hanging up here.
And you can get them dirty pictures off the wall as well, Mr. Meisel.
That was my real name, Meisel, before I changed it to Mitchell for the theatre.
And get that foreign off the wall and all.
It was no good explaining to him that was Lenin and the Russians were our allies, 1944.
I don't care who he is. Get him off the wall, because we don't want no pinholes in the wallpaper.
Because it was here in my rooms that I first got a feeling for Oxford. I spent a minimal amount of time studying here, an awful lot of time gazing out that window. I used to love to listen to the chimes every hour, the bells of Oxford, wonderful. Coming from a very ordinary Jewish middle-class background, it was the biggest experience of my life up to then. I'm not sure it wasn't the biggest experience in my life altogether. Oxford was an enigma. I didn't know what the word meant then, of course, but it was. I looked at all the buildings and I thought, oh, that's so beautiful. I didn't really think it was beautiful because I didn't know enough about architecture or art. But everyone said it was beautiful, therefore I knew it must be beautiful. So, I mean, I had no mind of my own at all. But in my own defence, I suppose I was just a bit of blotting paper in those days. I was soaking up experience. When I had the freedom to get as drunk as one wanted. In college, of course. When I had to learn how to get drunk like a gentleman, we were not encouraged to drink in pubs. I think this was perhaps one of the most important things, this extraordinary freedom to talk. We were encouraged. I suppose really that's what university was all about. We were encouraged to talk. Here was the first time I heard blasphemy put forward as a serious philosophical argument. I did a lot of listening. But no, I did more talking than listening. And it was exciting being away from home, and this idea of other undergraduates visiting one in one's rooms, and we consumed vast quantities of cocoa and bread and jam. That's all there was to eat in those days. Food in college was atrocious. I mean, no good at complaining to authority. Don't you know there's a war on, Mr. Mason? Oxford was all right, though. It was smashing. Well, except for one thing. There was one terrible drawback during the war. An awful shortage of birds. Well, it's very important to an undergraduate's educational experience with the opposite sex, you know. And Oxford was full of Americans. We couldn't get a look in it. And even if you did get a girl, I mean, they used to shut this gate at 10 o'clock. Well, you could pay a fine and come in up till 11, but after that you had to climb in, and the point was it worth getting your trousers ripped on the Dean's revolving spikes?
Can I have your autograph, please, Mr. Garnet?
And I thought if I shaved my moustache off, I wouldn't be recognised.
Thank you.
One of my first impressions was this sense of authority everywhere. You know, there were people with long black gowns on and people with dog collars, and yet despite this overriding feeling of authority, there was a kind of freedom I had never known before. That was the head porter. He called me sir, as they did 26 years ago. And I was bowled over by it then. I just borrowed a gown from him, or bumfries as we used to call it. We used to have to wear them all round the town to show one was a member of the university, you know. One had to wear it for all formal occasions, going into dinner. And if one didn't, one got sconced. What actually happened was I had a gown on, but I hadn't got a tie, and I hate ties. I was wearing sandals, improperly dressed for dinner, you see. And the butler came up. He said, Mr. Barnes has the honour of sconcing you, sir. I said, thanks very much. I hadn't a clue what he was talking about. Anyway, Julie arrived. The sconce pot. 2.5 pints of beer to be downed in 25 seconds. Cheers. Well, I've failed then as I failed now.
course, we know who could have done it, do we? Standing on his head. And then, of course, he's had a lot of practice. Because University College claims to be the oldest college in the university, founded by King Alfred. There's a marvellous bit here in the commemoration ball programme, June 61, about Hall. Here in the heart of the college, King Alfred and his thanes feasted sumptuously on high table, while the retainers sat in the body of the hall, living on the scraps. Comparison with the modern system demonstrates how dearly tradition is preserved. Well, as I said, the food was atrocious in college. But still, there were compensations for that consommé de Windsor brun 3 times a week with boiled potatoes in it. Because, I mean, this is a very beautiful place to eat in. And I was overwhelmed as an 18-year-old by the sense of history. There's a portrait of Lord Attlee, who was a member of the college. Bloody Labour git. I mean, as soon as he got into office, he'd give bloody India away, didn't he? And that is a portrait of Lord Beveridge, who was the founder of the welfare state. Yeah, it's his bloody fault, all this lot living off the dole, isn't it? Because Beveridge was master of University College when I was up. He was Sir William Beveridge then, and we were all invited in for sherry our first week of term. It was then I first became very much aware of this tremendous difference between the public school boys and the grammar school boys. I mean, the public school boys were so self-assured. You know, they knew exactly how to behave in circumstances like these. And I just felt inferior. Maybe it's because you are inferior, Warren. This is the Iffley Road running track, where I used to run the mile and 3 miles for the university. It was the only track in the country that had 3 laps to the mile, because it's all changed since then. It's 4 laps to the mile. Well, I don't think it's even a mile anymore. It's 1,500 metres now. It's the same track where Roger Bannister first broke the 4 minutes for the mile. Not quite in my class, of course. I did a lot of this that summer, jogging around this track. Well, you couldn't get the girls, you see. We were very lucky at University College. The day I arrived, I was met by the president of the junior common room. He said, "Can you row, lad?" I said, "No." He said, "Do you want to?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Right, get down to the river." We started off with one of these things. It's called a bank tub. It's actually tethered to the bank, of course. Have a great mirror up in front of us. You could watch yourself rowing, learn about your faults, and comb your hair at the same time. I had hair in those days. This is a single sculler. They put us into these to learn a bit about balance before they put us into an 8. We couldn't get an 8 for you this morning because we couldn't get 7 other blokes mad enough to get up at this hour of the morning. Funnily enough, that was one of the things I quite enjoyed about rowing at Oxford. These early morning training sessions. There was a marvellous feeling in the air. Well, 26 years since I've done this, so here it goes. Ooh. It's all coming back now. A fragrance. There were smells, I remember.
Goodbye, goodbye. I want to wish you all goodbye.
And so that long, hot summer finally came to an end, and in October 1944, I joined the RAF. While I was at Oxford, I met Richard Burton. We went to Canada together. I suppose it was from him that I got the first ideas of becoming an actor. I've never regretted that decision, but I do regret not coming back here after the war. And in these 2 days, wandering about Oxford, remembering it all, it's been very nostalgic. It's almost painful, sweetly painful. I suppose if Lucifer were to come walking into the fellow's garden now, he could have 51% of my soul. If I could be 18 again, and back here.